Good evening, everybody. I'm Tom Del Beccaro. That's Steve Hook, and we're Del Beccaro and Hook. We're on YouTube and Rumble. If you're watching this, please send a link to your friends. This is our 5th episode, and still no real, I don't know, what would you call it? Questions being answered by Kamala Harris. Is that too much to ask for a presidential candidate? We also had a horrible circumstance, a second assassination attempt, and even worse, maybe, is how bad the Secret Service explained it all to us, because that gives no comfort to anyone, least of all former President Trump. And we also want to talk to you today about the Middle East and what's going on. How will that affect the election? How is that war going? And I'm guessing you're not going to be watching this show or listening to it on your pager, so please put those aside. Let's jump first to Kamala Harris, if you will. Steve, this week we saw the Empty Love Fest with Oprah. I use the term Love Fest because it started out with Oprah and J-Lo and Chris Rock and that woman who was in Ocean's 11, who I won't say her name, and all these other people, and it all came down to some questions of Kamala. I mean, like a couple wanting to know what she's going to do. And once again, Steve, she didn't seem to be able to handle it.
No, of course she didn't. Tom, it was a love fest. You're not wrong. And seeing all of her celebrity pals up there endorsing her just made me realize how much faith I have in celebrities. I mean, here are people that are never, ever going to have to live with the consequences of a Kamala administration. It's just such virtue signaling garbage. And frankly, I'll tell you, the one person that I thought seemed kind of skeptical of the whole thing was Oprah. Did you see her eyes during the course of that interview? She's like, ooh, that didn't go well. And it really didn't. I mean, we're talking about some of the questions that were put to her. It was basically a video town hall, if you will. It was painful to watch, but a young couple asked her a question. I want to play this clip, Tom, just so you can I know you know about this, but let's just air this out, and then maybe we can kind of figure out, we can put our detective hats on, our deer stalker Sherlock Holmes hats, and we can figure out exactly why they don't want her to be seen in public. This is Kamala Harris answering a young couple's question about the cost of living. Check this out.
We really would love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
Yeah, first of all, thank you both for being here. And yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family, and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been. And we need to deal with that.
Rightly having the right. So I've never heard that you can rightly have a right. I've heard you can have rights. I didn't know ambition was a right. Never heard that either. And of course, this played the type with her because she talked and talked. Eventually, she got around to her price controls again, which nobody believes in. And so once again, she didn't give the answer. Now, the thing about people in these circumstances is, if this was the only time she'd ever done that, that would be one thing. This completely plays the type with her. We still don't know what she's going to do. She still can't answer questions. And even when she has the most friendly host or questioner on the globe that you can imagine, right? She can't answer the question.
No.
So is this eroding her? She's got, what do we got? Not that long, less than a couple of months to go for this election. Can she ride this out without answering any questions?
I'll tell you, I'll answer that. I don't think so. I really don't. As we talked about the other day, Tom, with Biden, there was an excuse to keep him hidden. He had COVID to fall back on. She doesn't have that luxury anymore, if you could call it a luxury. She can't fall back on well, I'm not going out because I don't want to endanger people or myself, which is the Biden line. And it worked for him because he was an old guy and everybody gave him a break. Kamala, no such luxury. She can't lean on that, and yet she is. And I think the media, frankly, now, Tom, you tell me if I'm wrong here, but it looks to me as if the media is getting not just concerned, but annoyed about this. They're starting to finally kind of like I said, even Oprah looked like I would love to have questioned that couple after that answer. I would love to say, did she confirm? Did she comfort you? Do you feel better now that you have the right to whatever?
Are you better off than 2 minutes ago? We
Exactly
we could ask them.
Yeah.
And of course, none of these, they're not answers, they're responses. An answer is, what are you going to do about inflation? I'm going to cut spending, and I'm going to reduce the energy costs.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
Slash
Donald Trump's
regulations.
response. Yes. So she doesn't have this response. And the fact that she did this with Oprah, and the whole world can see, everybody knows what was going on here. This is as puff pastry can get. And the souffle dropped, if I can continue with the food analogy here. And so it's pretty clear she can't handle this, but will that get around enough? You know, if you look at the state of the race, we had the Teamsters not giving her an endorsement for the first time in decades, not giving the Democrat endorsement. CNN, MSNBC did not cover the story fully. They didn't talk about the fact that almost by a 2-to-1 margin, the rank and file is supporting Trump in two internal polls. But that's a reality. Then you look at the polling that's out there that says that this is a neck and neck race. But here's what's important about that. You've probably heard on the air, folks, people saying, well, Trump's ahead of where he was 4 years ago and 8 years ago. Well, what does that mean? I mean, he's a known quantity now. Shouldn't he be in a good position? Well, the reality is, in both elections, the polling undercounted his supporters. And so if he won the popular or won the presidency back in 2016, and he's 6-7 points ahead of that, and they're tied now, does this mean they're undercounting him again? And he's got a great shot here. You hear anecdotal evidence in Virginia about the first day of early voting. A lot of Trump people came out. To me, it is a race that the PR agencies at CNN and MSNBC are making look close, but it's really hard for me to tell because the anti-Trump vitriol on the left is so loud that I'm starting to believe that that there's some strength there. And so it's not clear to me where the race is, but if she keeps this up for 40 days and doesn't answer any questions, I can't imagine we're in the same position 40 days from now.
I completely concur with everything you just said. I would only say that there's no question that the media, the vast majority of the media, is doing everything they can to carry the water. But as I mentioned before, they seem to be getting a little bit annoyed by it. And I understand why they're getting annoyed by it, because not only does Kamala do herself no favors by not answering any questions, she does the media no favors. The media comes across looking like the lapdogs that they are. And I don't think Oprah was gonna be their champion here. She seemed to be at times almost PO'd about the thing. Like, what in the hell? I mean, so we've talked, Tom, about why they keep her away for as long as they keep her away. Well, they keep her away because of what we saw with Oprah. She cannot think on her feet. She just can't do it. Off script, she's nobody. If you've ever seen the montages of her when she's on the road, when she's doing her campaigning, it's the same canned speech at every single event with just a new outfit. There's no change in, so she knows that stump speech as well as anybody. Get her off the stump speech, and she is a deer in her head in the headlights, talking about, hell, you want to hear another great one? This is another great one, and this is, folks, this is just one more reason why they keep her off TV and keep her away from your ears and eyes, because of answers like this. Last year, she was addressing the women's, the Women's Month or something or other. At any rate, the clip speaks for itself. Check this out.
So during Women's History Month, we celebrate and we honor the women who made history throughout history, who saw what could be unburdened by what had been. We see the suffragists, the riveters, the marchers, the mothers and sisters and aunts and grandmothers and daughters, all the giants upon whose broad shoulders we stand. For generations, women have continued to make incredible progress in the classroom, in the workplace, in the halls of government. And we are all here, evidence of that progress.
Women in history who have made history, as opposed to the women outside of history who made history. I wonder if they actually wrote that. But
if they did, that person needs to be fired.
Yeah, folks, I've given, I don't know, 2,500, 3,000 speeches, never used a teleprompter. And if you can't congratulate women for their strides without a teleprompter, then, what are you going to do standing in a Xi Jinping? At the end of the day, we're electing someone who has to negotiate with Putin and who has to negotiate with Xi Jinping, who has to sit down with those people. And so right after Biden was inaugurated, I wrote a piece in the Epoch Times, 4 years of living dangerously under Joe Biden. I just don't even know how to even calculate how dangerous it would be under Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I have no confidence in Tim Walz's relationship with China. I have no confidence in her insecurities and how Xi Jinping would deal with that. Now, look, China's in a very interesting moment. If you listen to Blaine Holt, who we had on recently, and we listened to Gordon Chang, both of them think that China's in a very unstable position, and wounded animals tend to take action, and so do wounded leaders. And so what's going to happen with China is on the table. Jerome Powell talked about the greatest danger to America today is the cyber attack on the banking system. And if she cannot answer a question with Oprah, she cannot sit in front of Xi Jinping. And what amazes me, I get division. Look, I wrote a whole book about it, The Divided Era, over my shoulder there. But for people to think that someone who's barely done anything in 3 years can fix everything, or the fact that they've been there 12 out of the last 16 years, but they need 16 out of 20. So the fact that this race is close is a testament to the anti-Trumpism and to this divided era.
Yeah, it's really sad, because that seems to be the platform. Anybody but Trump. And I'm as you just mentioned a little while ago, the Teamsters Union and the rank and file in the union members, that tells a whole different story. So I have a funny feeling that what we're being told by the media is not borne out by any anecdotal stories, certainly none that I've heard. I can tell you, I live in New Jersey, which is a deep blue state, but I live in the deepest, reddest part of that state. And the excitement is palpable here on the Jersey Shore for another Trump administration. We'll see if that carries over. I just don't know if hate is a campaign platform that can carry the day. I suppose we're about to find out, because that seems to be all it is. She can't answer anything, Tom. And the thought of her sitting across the table from Xi Jinping, or from the mullahs in Iran, or for that matter, even Little Rocket Man in North Korea, I just can't even fathom how that would go. I suppose they would do it kind of like they've done Biden. It'll just be a president by committee, and she'll just be the figurehead, because God knows she's not a very good talking head. So I don't know, Tom.
Yeah, you also have to deal with the fact that she's never really had a chief executive position. She's never been in charge of anything. She spent a short period of time as Attorney General in California, but the reality of that was she wasn't there for the extended time. She was known as the photo op Attorney General because she would just show up to photo opportunities. And so now she's going to be put in charge of the largest entity in the history of mankind. And she needs to sit down and bring in very strong people around her so that they can take on enormous entities like housing and urban development. She would obviously have to put someone in charge of the education department. She'd put in all these ideologues, and how would she manage them? Would she even know what they're doing? Wouldn't she be overwhelmed? And if you can't answer questions, that should be a good indication. What this all reminds me of as we wrap this segment up, what this reminds me of is there was a recent polling about, I think it was Gen Zs taking interviews, where a huge percentage of them did it without the video section. A huge percentage of them wanted to do it just by email, and a huge percentage of them brought their mother to the interview, kind of thing. And that's where we are in my mind. I mean, she is interviewing so badly, but the stakes are so high. And I repeat it again that JFK said, domestic politics can defeat us, but foreign policy can kill us. And given these higher stakes and the threat of cyber attacks, it just, I'm concerned.
It is kind of laughing as you walk by the gallows when you watch Kamala Harris. It's like, oh God, how can anybody be so stupid? And at the same time, you're thinking, oh, for God's sakes, please don't be that stupid. I'm with you there, Tom. I'm very concerned. I'm a Reagan optimist, as we've talked about in the past. I really do believe in the wisdom of the American people. The problem with that is the people aren't getting the whole truth. The media is intentionally playing a game of three-card monte with the public because they don't want the truth out. And here's the truth, folks. I don't give a damn how crazy it sounds or how hyperbolic it sounds. She has Marxist ideology written all over her. Comes from her father. Even her campaign slogan, Forward Together. Communist Party USA has been using that exact same slogan for over 20 years. Now you can say, well, that's proof of nothing. Well, it may not be proof of much, but it is proof of this. And that is she doesn't have a cogent thought in her head that she hasn't gotten from somewhere else and thinks plays well. And I don't think any of it's playing well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to wrap this segment up. We're going to head to segment 2, where we'll talk about the travesty of a second assassination attempt, as well as talk about where we are in the Middle East and the challenge that will present to the next president of the United States. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to us on either YouTube or Rumble and send it along to your friends, and we'll be right back.
All right, welcome back to Del Beccaro and Hook Enlightened Dissent. Again, as Tom mentioned, and I want to reiterate this, follow us at Del Beccaro and Hook on Rumble and YouTube, and share that link, subscribe, and really, we want to get this thing blown up, so help us out on that score. We'd appreciate that. Tom, a lot's been going off. I don't want to interrupt you if you get a pager message anytime soon, but might be a good idea to put it on silent. Let's talk about what's happening over in the Middle East, man. Pagers and walkie-talkies are all of a sudden fair game. What do you think? That might be the coolest story of the week.
Well, a couple of things are impressed about that. One, that it's such a long-term thing. And also the death of the man in Iran, that was put months and months ago. These pagers were purchased a long, long time ago. You have to wonder what else Israel has in its bag of tricks in this particular war. But you can see now we have news that one of the strikes killed another Hezbollah leader. They're serious about this, and they need to be serious about that. I've said many times they're in a race against time. And what I mean by that is as technology improves, their zone of protection shrinks every minute of the day. And we saw that with how Hamas broke in and killed those people and took those hostages. And so if they don't take a stand now, it only means they have to take a harder stand down the road. I think they should have gone harder, earlier, and longer and gone through this. Wars can only be fought for as long as a people support it. Abraham Lincoln said that about the Civil War, but I'm not going to overly second guess what's going on in the Israeli command. They know what their capabilities are far better than any of us do. But this isn't showing an end anytime soon. And what I want to know is how this is playing in the election, because it's not a top issue. The economy is a top issue. The border is a top issue, but I find it hard to believe that people are comforted by the fact that there's multiple wars out there and that Kamala Harris is the answer to that.
Oh God, that just kind of sent a shiver down my spine when you just said it. I do think that you're right. It's not top of mind for most Americans. There is a small segment that has been for lack of a better word, manipulated into this hatred of Israel. And I chalk that up to the victim versus the victimizer class struggle and all of this. And really, if you cook all that down, that comes back to Marxism too, in a way, doesn't it? But it is ironic that Kamala cannot take a firm stand on that or anything else, really. But that's one where she says, of course, we're going to always support Israel. But she kind of says it as if she's saying it with a wink and a nod. I mean, they have created this monster. That their Frankenstein monster of anti-Semitism is now rampaging through the town, various college and university campuses near you, as we saw last year. It's already started up again. A couple of days ago, University of North Carolina had a bunch of students protest, pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, damage the school. And this is make no mistake, this is a contingency of the Democratic base that's doing all this. And now Democrats don't quite know how to get the monster back on the, strapped down onto the gurney again, because the monster is running free. And I don't know how it's going to play out, but it's pretty damn scary.
That is a existing dynamic. Everybody knows they're doing this because they don't want to lose Michigan, not because they particularly believe in that. And so this represents another issue that the Democrats are straddling. They're straddling the fact that she can't answer a question. And then you have this issue of what's going on the college campuses and all of this pro-Hamas, anti-Israel rhetoric. And does that shave a few points off? Because that's really what matters here. The fact that she can't answer a question, the border, the economy, 2 and 3 points here for each one of these could be a particular big deal. Let's move now, though, to this issue of the Secret Service and President Trump. I did my best to watch the press conference yesterday. and not throw anything at the TV as it related to the Secret Service. That guy is a fool. He stood up there and tried to tell me that they're doing maximum effort for President Trump, and yet they did not sweep that property in advance of him getting there. That guy had been apparently holding out for like 12 hours. So if they had done a thorough sweep of the property, and that means walking it, and he tried to say that essentially nothing was wrong there, even though he came within 500 yards. Well, he had a gun that shoots 500 yards. You don't have to be right on top of the person. And so here we have a second attempt at, or would have been a second shot at former President Trump. The Secret Service is beyond incompetent. And what does that say about the state of the American Republic when we have reached a point where in presidential elections, you have two of these? And I want to remind people, yes, President Trump has his detractors, but the vitriol against Republican nominees and presidents has been rising. They said Eisenhower was dumb. Nixon was evil. Ford was dumb. Reagan was dumb and evil. And he was going to blow up the world, right? Bush Sr. was doddering. Bush Jr. was dumb. Romney was rich and evil as the nominee. And Trump was evil, even though he used to be a Democrat. They were going after DeSantis viciously, and will continue to do so. They were trying to undercut him in this process, so he couldn't build up momentum. They were kind to Haley like they were kind to John McCain, but they would have turned on her. So this isn't just about Trump. And this, folks, is what in history socialists do. They vilify, right? They don't run on their own merits. They vilify the opposition and say, if you don't elect us, you're going to be in trouble. Well, they got elected 12 of the last 16 years, and now we're in trouble.
Yeah. And the thing that really is, just to use old Southern term, chaps my ass, is that Trump takes one shot to the ear. Then less than a month later, he takes, well, he didn't take a shot, but he was definitely under the target of this guy. And the media knee-jerkingly turns the blame to Trump. Perhaps now he'll tamp down his campaign rhetoric. And then, of course, a segment or two later in the same news broadcast, you'll hear somebody say, we have never faced an existential threat as dangerous as Donald Trump. He is a threat to the very existence of our democracy. He is our American Hitler. He is Mussolini. He is Stalin. Hell, he's Stalin, Mussolini, and Hitler rolled into one. And then when you say, well, maybe that rhetoric isn't altogether safe, they just poo-poo the idea. Now, what scares me beyond the media's utter just propaganda mill style that they've taken on, it's so pathetically transparent. And again, as a Reagan optimist, I think the American people are wising up to it. But what really scares me is the fact that we know that southern border has been wide open since day one of the Biden administration. These two guys that tried to take out Trump, one of them was a 20-year-old kid that was all kinds of messed up in the head. He obviously wasn't a trained assassin, but he came literally within an ear of killing the former president. Then you have another guy that's been traveling all over Ukraine. He's been talking up how he wants to kill world leaders. So he's a nut job in his own right, travels all the way from Hawaii to West Palm Beach, Florida, to take out the president. Now, with that southern border wide open, Tom, how many state-sponsored terrorists and, yes, executioners, assassins have been sent across that border? It's cold comfort to hear this guy from the Secret Service get up and say everything went right. But when we know that border's wide open, and that's what keeps me up at night, is thinking, good God, if this was a trained, professional, state-sponsored assassin, we would be talking about a completely different story right now. And I pray God they've got it figured out before that comes down.
Yeah, of course, that is a big issue. When I ran against Kamala in 2015 and 16 for U.S. Senate in California, I said in the nuclear terrorist age, you can't have an open border. And we are 9 years past that part of the discussion. A good deal of the country believes that, and a good deal of the country doesn't think it's a big deal. And it won't be a big deal until we have an attack on the state or the country again. And then perhaps I'll learn a little. I don't think the lesson of 9/11 remained. And I talk about this in my book, The Lessons of the American Civilization. You've heard this many times, folks. It takes eternal vigilance. Freedom has to be won every day. But if you go around and look at America, they have been doing so well, so long, so unaffected by the violence around the world that they take everything for granted. This is normal in history. Civilizations start out much more stoic and willing to fight and fight not only for their freedom but also to make money and establish their families. And the American civilization did that. And now it's so wealthy and soft that you have safe spaces. All you have to do is compare the kids who went to Normandy to the kids today who can't even do an interview. Oh my God, that includes the person running for president of the United States who's afraid to do an interview. Yeah. What would she have done on the beaches of Normandy and the like? And so that this failure to be clear-eyed about what sits right in front of your eyes, this particular danger, and the fact that we have this media that is so supportive of recklessness. I mean, how on earth do you sit there and say it's President Trump's fault when the guy who did this, the second guy, was parroting the words that you on the left use, right?
Exactly right.
It'd be one thing if he shouted out something that Trump says, right? But no, he parrots exactly the language of the left, and then they still blame President Trump. And no, I have no confidence that we're going to get to the bottom of what really went on. Christopher Wray, who I don't know what cartoon character he reminds me of, but the reality is he says, "Oh, we may never know his motive." Oh, okay. Well, if he's parroting what the left said, if he's given to the left over the years, and he has spoken, and all these pictures of all these famous people on the left, then where's the confusion, except for the cover-up? And quite honestly, I don't trust the internal investigations of this. And you don't have to just take my word for it. I mean, the Republicans are trying to get this information, and they're not giving it to them as to exactly what went on. A child would know that roof should have been protected. How anyone didn't protect that roof is beyond me. And then to say that they're doing a perfect job, even though you didn't walk the property prior to Trump going there, is also absurd.
Yeah, you mentioned two things. You mentioned the roof, and of course, the roof was the first attempt at Butler. That you're right. That seems like it was the obvious place to if you were somebody that was trying to create some death and destruction. That's exactly where you would park yourself, and yet the Secret Service was nowhere near it. The Secret Service at the time tried to say, well, it was a mix-up in communications between the local PD and our team, and you know what? Other than that, it went great. Then you go to the next one in West Palm at Mar-a-Lago. Well, apparently that exact location where this shooter was well known by paparazzi. They used to go there all the time, and probably, well, I don't know that they will anymore, but they'd always gone there to take photos. And again, just outrageously, they miss it. And then again, what does the acting Secret Service director say? Well, he says, we really didn't communicate well enough with local law enforcement. We really didn't. It was our communication that sucked, not our protection. Everything went great, except for the fact that the guy was parked with an AK-47 scoped and he hung two bags near him covered with armor protective tiles in the bags. And they say everything went well. That just doesn't play. Everybody knows it doesn't play. And the thing is just so incredibly scary. And again, I can't help but go back to, if these two shooters were actually, accomplished shooters that were there to do a state mission, we'd have a different conversation right now. And they wouldn't get away with saying, well, everything went well, but we have a dead former president on our hands. That's what they'd be saying. And it's really pathetic. And I just don't think that people are buying into the hatred of the media and the Dems anymore. At least I pray not.
Yeah, I don't even know how this guy goes out in campaigns now, because especially in any big city where there's buildings and windows, and how on earth would he be able to do that? Last year or earlier this year, I was in New York City where he visited a fire department, and of course he walked in the street. Well, given this, I don't quite see how he does this. Now, of course, this is part and parcel to them wanting to intimidate anyone who would fight back against the glorious state that they're building. Again, this is normal in history. We haven't even gotten to censorship. I mean, here's the reality of it. Censorship is the first tool of the dictator. If you don't have a right to redress your government, Magna Carta, then you don't have freedom. And so what does censorship do? The point of censorship is to stop you from protesting. And the minute you give up your right to say that they're wrong, you give up freedom. And yet here we are fighting for that tooth and nail. And for many people who support Trump, they want to end their ability to support Trump, just like they tried to take him off the ballot. And I wish it wasn't this serious, but it clearly is this serious. And so where this goes from here in the next 40 days, I pray for his safety, as I would anybody, by the way, running in this particular position. But I also deeply worry now where those who would seek to hold on to power in Washington, D.C., what they're doing and what they would do next. Folks, that's our show for today. I'm Tom Del Beccaro. That's Steve Hook. We'll be back next week with a special edition related to my book, The Lessons of the American Civilization. But for now, we hope you enjoy these shows. Del Beccaro and Hook. We're on YouTube. We're on Rumble. And we're hoping you will send a link to a friend and start that snowball rolling. So as Steve would say it up, that it blows up. But he means that in a very nice, particular way.
Not like a pager. Not like a pager.
All right, Steve, good seeing you. And we'll see you all next week.